Ancient religious language often arranges itself around patterns. Sevens appear again and again: 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 lamps. Most readings stop at the surface, treating these as historical references or prophetic images. But another interpretive current has always moved beneath that surface, suggesting that these numbers point inward rather than outward. In this symbolic view, the 7 are not locations on a map, but stages within human experience itself. They describe a structure already present in the body, a progression that unfolds along the spine and culminates in awareness rather than geography. Sacred texts, read this way, are not forecasting external events, but outlining an internal process. The language remains mythic because the subject is subtle, dealing with perception, consciousness, and transformation. This does not replace traditional theology, but it reframes it. The text becomes less about institutions and more about initiation, less about history and more about how awareness organizes itself step by step within a human being. At the center of this interpretation stands a small, often overlooked structure in the brain, the pineal gland. For centuries, it has attracted attention from philosophers, physicians, and mystics alike, not because of its size, but because of its position and function. Situated deep within the brain, it occupies a kind of midpoint, suspended between hemispheres, between sensory input and internal regulation. Symbolically, it becomes a meeting place. Ancient traditions refer to a single eye, not as a literal organ of sight, but as a mode of perception that is unified rather than divided. When religious language speaks of illumination or inner light, it often gestures toward this capacity. The pineal gland, in modern terms, regulates cycles of darkness and light within the body. In symbolic terms, it governs the transition between ordinary awareness and deeper states of perception. The overlap between these descriptions is where interpretation begins to open. When ancient cultures tracked the movements of the heavens, they were not engaging in astronomy alone. The sky functioned as a symbolic mirror. The sun's journey through the constellations was observed with precision, but also interpreted as a pattern that echoed human life. Seasonal transitions marked not just agricultural cycles, but psychological and spiritual thresholds. The arrival of spring, coinciding with the sun's movement into Aries, carried themes of renewal, emergence, and initiation. The image of the lamb appears here not as zoology, but as timing, a symbol anchored to celestial rhythm. These correspondences were not hidden in the sense of secrecy, but encoded in plain sight, assuming a reader who understood that outer movements reflected inner processes. The heavens were read as a story, and that story was understood to repeat itself within the human organism. From this perspective, the sun's path through the zodiac is not only a cosmic event, but a metaphor for the evolution of awareness. As the sun moves steadily through distinct phases, so too does consciousness pass through stages of development. Each phase brings a different quality of perception, a different relationship to identity and meaning. Ancient texts often blur the line between these levels, speaking of journeys, trials, deaths, and rebirths. Read symbolically, these are not descriptions of travel, but transitions of understanding. The individual mirrors the cosmos, not because of superstition, but because both follow patterned movement. The same logic that governs cycles in nature appears in cycles of attention, insight, and self-awareness. What looks like theology becomes psychology expressed through the language of stars. The pineal gland enters this framework as a symbolic summit, In symbolic anatomy, this corresponds to awareness that is no longer fragmented across competing impulses. The idea of a book of life being opened follows the same pattern. It is not a ledger in the sky, but a state in which experience becomes coherent. Life is read clearly because perception itself has aligned. This alignment is described as ascent, not in space, but in organization. Awareness moves upward through successive centers of integration until it reaches a point of unification. The language remains mythic because the experience resists precise description. The 7 energy centers described in Eastern traditions offer a parallel structure. Arranged along the spine, they represent stages of stability, creativity, agency, empathy, expression, insight, and integration. Each stage is associated with specific challenges and capacities. When compared with the 7 churches described in Revelation, the correspondence becomes less speculative and more structural. Each church is addressed with praise and correction, as if describing a condition that can be refined. Read inwardly. These are not communities, but states of being. Progression requires attention, discipline, and discernment. Nothing is granted automatically. The ascent is gradual, not dramatic. The repetition of the number 7 across cultures suggests a shared recognition of this layered human architecture, even when expressed through different symbolic languages. Meditation appears in these traditions not as escape, but as calibration. It is the practice of bringing attention into alignment with these internal stages. The imagery of seals being opened or steps being climbed conveys effort and sequence. Each level must stabilize before the next becomes accessible. In yogic symbolism, this process is described through the image of a coiled force at the base of the spine, rising slowly as conditions allow. The imagery is metaphorical, not anatomical. It points to the gradual redistribution of attention and energy within experience. As awareness becomes less reactive and more coherent, perception changes. This change is felt not as fantasy, but as clarity. The language of ascent describes the ordering of consciousness, not the movement of a substance. Modern neuroscience adds an unexpected layer to this picture. The pineal gland's role in regulating sleep, rhythm, and internal timing suggests that it already functions as a threshold organ. Alterations in its activity correlate with changes in perception and dream states. Some researchers explore its involvement in naturally occurring compounds associated with altered awareness. While science does not confirm metaphysical claims, it does not dismiss the subjective experiences reported across cultures either. Instead, it reframes them as states with physiological correlates. This does not reduce their meaning, it grounds it. The symbolic language of ancient texts and the empirical language of modern study begin to overlap, each filling gaps the other cannot address alone. When religious language speaks of the kingdom within, it is pointing toward this internal landscape. Enlightenment, in this context, is not belief but perception. It is the capacity to see experience without distortion, to respond rather than react. References to higher heavens or elevated realms describe qualitative shifts in awareness, not destinations beyond the world. The third heaven becomes a way of naming a level of perception that transcends habitual thinking. It is accessed not by departure, but by refinement. Attention becomes stable, meaning becomes coherent, experience feels ordered rather than fragmented. These descriptions persist across traditions because the underlying process is human, not cultural. Viewed this way, ancient scripture reads less like doctrine and more like a manual written in symbolic code. It does not instruct directly, it gestures. It assumes participation rather than obedience. The convergence of spiritual tradition and contemporary inquiry suggests that these texts were never meant to be closed systems. They invite interpretation because they describe something alive and ongoing. The journey they outline is internal, repeatable, and personal. Nothing is imposed from outside. The transformation occurs through attention, reflection, and disciplined awareness. What was once projected onto the heavens is rediscovered within experience itself, and in that rediscovery, the symbolic language regains its purpose. Not to mystify, but to orient consciousness toward its own depth.